and lifted their lid. But when you do that, you don't have too much control of it. And the ladies that were cooking over the open fire had big skirts on a lot of times, and they had to maintain control fairly well. So this is a more modern method. I think it's more modern. And basically you make a 3-tine fork on the bottom of this rod, and you notice that the hooks are at different levels. Some are higher and some are lower. And that gives you the method of, let me get it right. This one is backwards, I think, even though I made it. And this is a
Put you another twist.
knockoff Dutch oven, so you can maintain control of it pretty well when you have 3 points of contact down here. Before we get going, anybody have any questions? All right, so I'm going to use this as an opportunity. Making one of these doesn't take 3 hours, so what I'm planning on doing is making a decoration on the end of the handle that is a wizard. We call it a wizard. And I brought my tools to do that. So this is going to be kind of like 2 different demonstrations. One's to make a decoration and one's to make a functional tool. And I'll combine them to make a pretty cool looking functional tool, I hope. Now I brought extra pieces in case I mess up, and I have messed up before. So, as we all have. What am I forgetting? Anything? Yeah, you're all here. You're tired of hearing me talk. All right. So.
No, we're just glad we can hear you.
I've got a piece of 3/8 inch square rod. That's what I made that one out of, and that's what I've made my test pieces out of. And I did a lot of work at home doing test pieces because it had been about 20 years since I'd made one. And when I do pretty much anything in the shop, I take notes. And the notes tell me what I'm planning to do, and then later on, when I either succeed or not, or I can find a better way of doing it, I'll make notes on my notes to say, don't do that, or do this differently. And one of them in here is upsetting the end to get those 3 tines. I upset my very first one so it was 3/4 inch square at the end, which is massive. And it was way too much material, so I marked in my notes, don't make that big. And so, if you only make it 5/8, that's a huge amount of difference between 5/8 and 3/4. So just be aware of that. But you can see, I do a lot of notes on all my projects. That way I have them for the future. If I come back 20 years later, I didn't do it back then, but if I come back 20 years later, I can go find my notes and say, oh, I remember how I did this.
What's your bar length there, about 40 inches?
Yeah, pretty close. I measured it, but I don't remember how long. I'm not being particular.
Okay.
It'll end up being, I'll be able to double it for the handle like this. The ones I did at home, I started out with 3 feet, and they were a little short. I only did a single side for the handle, a single bend instead of a double bend. Sorry. I keep forgetting I got that on there. All right, so upsetting. The end of this bar, I'm going to upset a lot. You think about it, you go from 3/8 square to 3/4 square. The end of that bar's got 4 times the mass of a 3/8 bar. That's a lot of upsetting. So you're probably going to get bored watching me do this, but I'm going to take the opportunity and show you that there's more than one way to upset as well. So there'll be 3 or 4 different methods that I can use that you can learn that there are options for you later on. Any questions before I get to sweating? I will sweat before I'm through. All right, I'm going to have a hammer. I put this out here so people can see better. I don't know if that's gonna benefit everyone or not. I don't have electric blowers in my shop at home, but you all need to holler if you see something sparkling. Okay. So, upsetting is just basically the opposite of drawing. You're going to make the bar shorter, but in doing that, you're going to make it fatter and thicker. And so you can, it's different, many different ways you can upset. You can do it in the vise, hold a piece in the vise, hold a piece in the vise. You can do it on the floor, you can do it on the anvil, using the mass of the bar itself to do the upsetting. One of the things, first things I'm going to teach you though, if you got to do a massive upset, make it really large on the end, I'm going to put a pyramid on the end of the bar. And so when I hit it after that, the force will go down in the center of the bar more. Instead of flopping over to one side, if you're off a little bit with your hammer blow, instead of flopping over, it'll tend to stay straighter a few more hits. So instead of hitting it 2 times and you got to straighten it out, you might hit it 3 or 4. Get a little bit more work done. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is just far side of the anvil, all 4 sides, getting that down a little bit. And you don't think that's much, but you think about it, when I'm doing that, I'm actually upsetting a little bit already. So then you can do all sorts of stuff. This is a little long to do this with. See how it bends? You're not going to be able to stop that. So you got to pay attention to it and control it. This is a rather slow way of upsetting because every time you hit it with a hammer, you've got to start this whole bar moving, and that takes a lot of your energy up. So you can see that little bit there. The end's almost back to being flat. It has swelled up just a little tiny bit. While this heats, I'm going to tell you that I'm getting ready to put a pyramid on the end again, and I'm going to come over here to this upsetting block. And I'm going to use gravity to help me upset it. I'll still have to straighten it periodically. Don't forget that. You're always going to have to straighten it because physics does what it does, and it wants to bend like a noodle. Another thing you can do is try and just heat an inch of the end, 1.5 inches. I'm getting used to this fire. I stuck the bar all the way in and had 4 or 5 inches the first time. Well, that makes more loose noodle material.
How far up are you trying to upset?
I want the end to be about 3/4 of an inch.
Yeah,
you'll get what you get.
3/4 by 3/4, or
the end.
Like how far back up are you trying to get 3/4?
Whatever I get. So I've got some examples here. I thought I did. This one's not 3/4, but you can see how much material I got.
It's about 1.5 inches.
Swelled up, yeah, 1.5 inches.
Okay.
1.75 inches. And I'm not shooting for that. All I'm interested in is getting a mass of material on the end, and I'm going to stop my cut before I ever get down to the 3/8. I want a larger mass where I stop my cut. The cuts will be high stress areas, so you want to put them in a volume that's going to support the piece when it's being used.
Okay.
All right, so. And I can also do this. Oh. So a heavier hammer you use, the deeper into the bar you're going to offset. going to upset. So now you can see, I burned it a little bit. It's a little bit more swelled up. Before it gets totally cold, I'm going to put my pyramid on the end. So that I don't have to use it up my heat, the next heat. I won't be over here on the hammer, on the anvil, putting my pyramid on. I can go right straight to upsetting. I'm going to show a little bit in the vise as well, here in this heat, if I remember to. So upsetting is one of the 5 or 6 basic processes in blacksmithing, and there are a lot of times that it'll make the job, the project that you're working on, go a lot smoother if you upset rather than maybe weld or use big material and have to draw it out in other areas. So, sometimes there's an advantage to upsetting. So a lot of people will do this in a post vise. And I'm going to show you what happens. As I said, it's going to lop over like that. Still got it straightened. This is another way a lot of people use, and I'll tell you a short story. Am I huffing and puffing too much in this thing?
You're fine.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
Years ago, I got a lesson and didn't know I got a lesson until later. I was at the Madison conference and was talking with Francis Whitaker, one of the few times I talked to people. But Francis, I shook his hand, and his wrist was just clank, 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 clank when he shook his hand. He said, "Don't worry about it." I looked surprised, like he was coming apart, you know? And he said, "Don't worry about it. That's what you get when you upset against yourself." So a lot of times you won't see me hitting against myself when I'm upsetting. And he said, either figure out a different way to upset, or use a real heavy pair of tongs in your hand, and that gives you more resistance against that blow. He said he thought that his wrist was loose because of all of the jarring from upsetting. I don't know how that could be in his right hand, but I take it, he knew what he was talking about, so I take his word for it. So one of the things I didn't show you when I did this upsetting here, and I'll do it again, is if you grip that piece in the vise vertically, you think about the jaws don't meet perfectly parallel, and they don't pinch that, but in one spot, at the bottom, sort of like a nail header. What do you do with a nail header? You upset the head of a nail, right? Well, that's what you're doing in this, but only on 2 sides. So, see how it's slipping down into the handle? So it did upset.
You seem to get more traction on it.
Yeah, I got more traction. But notice, before I hammer on it, notice where the vise had a hold of it. You can see where the jaws were slipping down. And if you got hot material right there at the top of the jaw, you're going to make a head. You're going to make the lip for a head. So just be aware of it. It might not be a game stopper. If you like doing it that way, that's fine. Just make sure that you remember later on to go and dress that out of there, file it, dress it out so that you don't have that abrupt hit on the top. Now, I'm going to show you another way. I'm going to show you another way in the vise that you don't get that effect so much. A lot of people don't realize this option's available to them. Questions while I'm waiting for that to heat. So I'm going to use the vise again, but I'm going to use it differently. And I'll have a lot less slippage, and I'll have a lot less of that shoulder, if you will, when I drive it through the jaws, because I'm going to put it in the vise horizontally. You can still see what you're doing. You can still move it around, like when you do a rivet set, or you do a nail head. You can move that material around by hitting it different with a hammer. And so you'll be able to do that as well in the vise. So it takes about 8 or 10 heats normally for me to go from 3/8 to 3/4 on the end of the bar. Might take me a few more today because I'm talking so much. It didn't slide at all in that vise job. Since it locked over to one side, I hit more at an angle, so I got a real high side on this thing. I'm going to show you how to use that to upset even better. So this time, before I go in the fire, I'm going to make that I call that a point. That edge is really a point if you put it in the center line of the bar. So I've got that edge is right more or less in the center line of the bar. So when I hit it this time, I'm going to be hitting there first. And that'll upset that whole side and catch it up to the rest. Any questions on that? It's all physics. I'm an engineer, forgive me. It's all physics, it is. And who can defy the laws of physics here? Oops, sorry. I can't run one of these. A lot of people think they can, or a lot of people don't realize they can't. Let me put it that way, especially when they're driving. That's a pet thing with me. All right. So you're going to see me come out, and I'm going to hit right on that real sharp angle, which is now moved over towards the center of the bar this time. The hotter you can get the material without burning it, which I burned it earlier, the hotter you can get it, the more it's going to move. The first 2 or 3 licks are the ones that are going to move the most material. That's true with any process when you're handling. Because the material's more plastic. Notice that I have my hand back up against my leg. That's partly to help me keep from knocking my wrist bones loose. I don't know if it works or not. But. All right, something else I've got going on here. The very end, I'm hitting harder. When you hit light, you work the very end. When you hit hard, you work it further down in the bar. So you see I've been hitting it light when I'm on the back side of the anvil hitting towards me, I'm hitting fairly light. So you see that it really mushroomed at the top. Well, I'm gonna true that up. I'm gonna make those sides look relatively straight. It'll be a swelled up shape, but it won't have that head on the end. I'm getting close to, I'm over 1/2 inch. You will choose different ways of upsetting depending on the application. This light little bar, I'm able to lift very easily, so I'm not afraid to use a upsetting block on the floor. If it was a 1-inch bar, 5 feet long, it would be a different answer. It gets tiring. So in the case of a real big bar, a lot of times, especially with a heavy handle, I'll use the side of the handle and I'll run that bar into the side of the handle. And just that way you're not doing weightlifting. You're using the mass of the bar to upset the bar. And it goes pretty quickly when you got a massive bar. That's not a bar.
Massive anvil too then.
Pardon?
I said you need a massive anvil
You
too.
need a pretty good size anvil. Yeah, you can do it with a 150 pounder, but I wouldn't do it with a 50 pounder.
Unless you put it against the wall.
Better be a solid wall.
That's true too.
I can't make up my mind what to do next. The base of my vise at home is very heavy, so I use it a lot. Instead of a little block. So this bar has gotten appreciably shorter. I'm not having to reach as high to hit it.
There's an upset block on the front of that anvil too.
I'll try it.
That'll help you lower it a little bit.
So when you start to get that dog leg, if you will, in the bottom down there where it's soft, once it starts, you're not making much progress with upsetting, so quit and straighten it. Because all you're going to do is bend it even further. And bending is
Not upset.
really, it's counterproductive when you're doing upsetting. So I just put a little pyramid on the top of that. Questions? Ideas?
You had a little bit of fish slipping when you did the cone because you were cold.
Yeah.
You don't worry about that. It'll just drive back in.
If you don't go too far, as soon as I hit it, it's going to be gone. And if you find that you have got a cold shut or a hot shut in it,
Foul it off.
just file it off at the end. At the end of the upsetting process. Before you actually do. If you do have a hot or cold shut, you can, when you draw out your tines, you can have that in the end of your tines. And sometimes they're like razor blades. Get close. Like forge welding, upsetting, you do most of your work when you first come out of the fire, so at home, I'll carry my hammer with me. So no matter where I decide to go, I got it ready to rock.
Are you just as indecisive at home?
Pardon me?
I said, are you just as indecisive at home,
Yes.
not knowing where you're going to go?
Not normally. I know where my equipment's at.
Yeah.
Oops. Gotta kiss the end. Make good. Just right in the wrong spot. Ding, ding, ding. got, it's over a half, maybe 9/16. You start to end up pushing this upsetting further down into the rod as the face gets bigger. You do less work on the face because it's so large. You do more work down deeper. So when this gets to 5/8, that upset wedge will be further down. It'll be taller than it is now. So when I get done upsetting, and as I mentioned, there's several different ways of upsetting. I'm going to make that mass of material. I'm going to spread it out and flatten it, and I'm going to cut for my tines. The three different tines on the end of this tool. More. It'll be pretty close. I've got pretty close to 5/8 on the end. I'm gonna do one more heat, clean it up, and then we'll flatten it and make the tines. Questions?
Okay, so you're saying, you're gonna take that, you're gonna flatten it, and then make it cut?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you typically switch back and forth between methods as often on the upsetting like surfaces that you're using?
I actually do, yes.
What's the purpose in the
Every one of these is different, so I guess just a change of pace. You're doing the same thing over and over and over again. You're not making any ground, try something else. And you also can get tired if you're an old man that doesn't do this enough. You get out of shape and you get tired if you're doing the same thing over and over and over. I don't know if that's a good answer or not.
No, it works.
I switch up all the time. Switch up all the time.
Definitely makes
Unless
sense.
it's a great big bar and I don't want to do this, I'll do this quite a bit. But no impact when you're doing that. It's just swinging the bar back and forth. The impact's over there. One more time. Question?
Favorite color?
Blue. I think. Do you have a cutting plate? Or do I just need to be careful? So you'll see, if you're very, very observant, you'll see every now and then that end is not quite square. So I'll take that. I do this without thinking about it. I'll take that and I'll put that up, everything else up. So when I hit that corner, when I make that blow that time, that whole corner set down. All right. That's it. So I'll carry this around. I didn't keep track of how many heats, but several heats. And the end of it now is about 4 times the size of the bar originally, cross section. So that's a lot of material when you go to make a fork or a 3-time tool. Now I'm gonna flatten it, but I just went to a lot of work to make it thick, right? Don't go too far when you're flattening it. Also use your peen and it makes it wider. I wanna keep that mass. I put that mass there for a reason. So I don't wanna just go to hammering it back and drawing it back out. So I'm gonna use my peen and my hammer as a fuller and make it wider. And it won't be hardly any longer than it starts out. It'll just be wider. And I'm gonna leave it 5/16 to a quarter inch minimum thickness, but 5/16 is where I'll start, where I'll aim for. And that should just take one heat. So I'm gonna run fire reval set. How many of you have ever made a 3-time fork? Not very many. Not very many. I don't know if I ever have or not, but I have made this, which is very similar. And in fact, at Possum Trot Forge, their next monthly project's a 3-time fork, more than 2-time fork, because I showed them this part of this demonstration, and they got all enthused with 3-time fork. So I got that too hot, but I'm gonna make that work.
It'll cool off.
Peen. I choose my sides strategically. Flip it. Every so many hits, flip it. You're doing more work on the top surface than you are on the bottom. So you're gonna get mushrooms cross section if you don't keep flipping it. And you can keep the sides flat by doing that. Does that make sense? Flat. Same thing is true with a flat of the hammer. You do more work on the surface you're hitting with a hammer than the handle does on the bottom side. So I've kept that. Instead of just letting it go up to a fishtail, I've kept the sides somewhat parallel. The very end, 3/4 of an inch or so. That'll make it easier for me to get the same amount of volume on either side. I'll quit doing that.
Speakers.
I'm gonna make it a little thinner. I got a little bit of rollover, top and bottom. I mean side to side. But I'll hammer all of that out before it becomes hot or cold shut. You can see there's a little fish lip starting on the sides. I'll get that out of there. Before I really make a crease, I'll get that out of there. Oh, did I move it?
Yeah, turn it. Now roll.
It takes a long time to take pictures.
Coming back in my finger roll.
I got a pick on you there.
Which finger is it, Doug? Is it that one?
All right. I'm gonna flatten this out a little bit more, and then I may start my cuts. I'll start my cuts using a straight chisel with a round bottom. That allows me to, I can sight down it, looking at it this way. And when I get it started in the right spot, I can roll it up and just continue line straight on. I do that in 2 different places. That gives me 3 times. 2 cuts gives you 3 times. frustration of being prepared, knowing what you're gonna do when you come out of the fire. Getting those fish mouth sides cleaned up. So you got a massive amount of material, you got longer to hammer on it too. So the fish mouth sides are almost all gone. And I got nearly an inch width. And I'll be able to cut that in thirds, close to thirds. And when I draw those out, I'll make them thinner anyway. So that's why I want to leave it thick. So I got a 1/4 inch thick. All right. Questions? Waiting for that to heat up.
How long did you say that you're looking to make it before you start the
I didn't. Around an inch. It's about an inch. So I want to. My reasoning is this: I want to make it wide enough. When I make a cut, I mean, it's easy to tell when I got the same amount of material on both sides, so uniformity is good. And I'm not cutting that close to the edge. The closer to the edge, I'll show you when I make a wizard. When you get close to the edge with a chisel, it breaks out. It splits out. So you want to be away from that edge quite a ways. So if you're over, in this case, I'll be about almost 1/3 of an inch. What's that? 3/8. Height of your anvil matters a lot. I got one bigger than the other. I'm going to move it over before I go to making them deep. There we go. Okay, this is still hot. You can't see very well. But I got a real good start on my cuts. They're not real deep, but they're going to be real deep here in a minute. And so I got them stopping roughly the same length down the bar. And they're about the same width, so that gives them about the same amount of material in each time.
How long do you make your cut?
Long enough. You got to remember, you don't have to make it a mile long because you're going to draw these out. I like mine a little longer than some because I like to leave my tines really thick. So I made, and here's another thing. I stopped now a little short of where I want to end up because you can see why in a second. Thank you. Good question, because there is another step with making these cuts. I'll go to the anvil and I'll use a round bottom punch to punch down into those cuts, so I don't have any real sharp bottoms. Why not a sharp bottom? Anybody know? Stress risers. Right. Yep. Stress risers. And for those of you that don't know about stress risers, if you don't pay attention, you will find out.
I didn't know.
When I when I was practicing the wizard, I did that on a practice piece. I did the wizard first. Part of that is cutting the whisker, the mustache out, and I don't normally go in there and make those a round bottom cut. And then I went and worked on the other end doing some other work like this, and it broke off right where the bottom of those cuts were because of stress risers. All right, so I'm gonna be real careful not to cut the handle. I don't think my punch will do that anyway. Should be cooling my punch, my chisel. A little bit cold. I'm going to start these opening up. Jump!
Yep.
Just barely got the slit started from the top. I'll get it hot and I'll finish that up. And while I'm waiting for it to warm up, I'll dig up my round bottom punch. Just going straight down, cutting through that web. Stop that. I'm gonna get hot again because I'm going to use this to round out the bottom of the cuts. Questions while I'm heating? When I get done making the bottom of the cuts rounded, I'm going to pull two of those tines out of the way, convenience pins, get them out of the way, so that I can work on the third. Just using this instead of a chisel. Probably mild steel, but it does a job on hot material. There we go. All right. Oh. So I'm trying to get the bottoms round. Almost the same length.
Sorry.
Round it up. Pardon?
You round it out like to be the joint and
Yeah.
keeps the stress out of it.
Yep. Clean out yourself, clear out your sinuses. All right, so I'm gonna pull two of these out of the way. I'm gonna work on the third. One of the things I've got to do is there's a little bit of rag where I made the cut, the initial cut into the piece. So I'll try and get that out of the way while I'm doing all of this. It doesn't take much. You wanna do these bends when it's really, really warm. Heck, I don't know how many of you are farmers or work on farms, but if you've ever taken a piece of wire and broken it, that's work hardening steel. And if you've been in cold material, that same thing will happen. You'll get little hairline cracks in the surfaces and they'll just get bigger, they'll never get smaller. So that's why I put it back in the fire. Get it hot. Now I'll move them. That one's almost swelling temperature. I'm trying to get them out of the way as much as I can. Now I can draw that center one out. Trapezoid shape, so I gotta get it square first. So a little bit of rag, get rid of it. So I'm gonna draw these 3 tines out, make them about 2.5 inches long. Sorry?
Yeah, there we go.
And the idea is I got enough for a finial and the hook itself. Finial takes up a little bit. Why do we put finials on things, or why do I put finials on things? Then you don't have a point sticking out there ready to catch your clothes or something like that. You can keep the material hot a certain amount, just by hand clean it off and moving it back and forth at 90 degrees. Keeps growing. So it cools down real slow though. Sometimes. Questions while we're waiting for this to warm? Now that I've got it real fine, I gotta be careful not to burn it. You saw I took it out a minute ago and it's sparkling. I'm not getting it this hot today, or this heat. So I can work that area down there in the center by putting it on the corner of the anvil, if I need to. And then further down, just set it on the anvil and leave everything else off. Something that Rob teaches, I think. It's Rob. If you got a hot fire and you got a real fine piece of material that you're trying to heat, don't turn the blower on. Just let that fire do the job. That fire down in there is really warm, so it comes out of there hot. So I'm gonna hit all the high, sharp edges, all 4, full length, just make them a little softer. All right. So I got no creases and cracks down the bottom, and it stays that way. The way I'm going to build this, I'm going to build it opposite that one. That one, the 2 side ones are short. I'm going to make the center one short. So I don't care if it's a little short looking. It's because I'm going to make it short anyway. The other 2 I'm going to make longer. And you're going to see when I get done with one, I'll mark or identify how long it is on the anvil. So that when I get the second one done, I know when to stop or when to keep going.
You're gonna go ahead and put a finial on that now? after you draw the all 3 out.
I was gonna draw all 3 out first. I could put the finish line up. Might get it right, some of the other stuff. So it'll need an extra heat at the end though. When I get ready to do the hook, I'll do the finish first and then the hook. All right,
54 minutes.
You were trying to make things like in production, like make multiple ones at a time. You like have one in the fire and heat it, and then work on it, and then, you know, have multiple ones going.
Generally, that's the idea. If you have a coal forge, that's more difficult to do. If you have a gas forge, you can do it all day long. So the answer is yes and no. Tomorrow I'm doing a different demo in Lebanon, and that's one that I do 3 at a time. So I have one I'm working on and 2 heating all the time. In a coal forge, I can get the fire going. I have a hand crank, so I can get the fire going, and I can have 3 pieces in there and work on one, and the other 2 are still heating because that fire's still hot. If you have a gas forge, gas forges are really conducive to production work if you're going to do production work. And I've never done a whole lot of that, but I do try and use my time efficiently. So I will make 3 if I've got something that I won't burn out. I'm sure I won't burn out. See, talking. All right, so I ruined that one. So out of the way she goes, and I'll show you how I do a side one, and then I'll switch, since I've got pre-prepared pieces in case I mess up, I'll go to work on it. Instead of this one.
Watch out with that point facing up.
What's that?
So just watch out with that point facing up and hammer it.
So I need it hotter, but not that hot.
You have it right in your hand real quick.
So at the time that I'm getting ready to pull out and work on, I've got down on the fire, that's gonna heat faster. Talking. Not your fault.
I'm sorry.
Not your fault. That's why I brought extras, because I know that I get to talking. And I've had it happen more than once. This is the way you would do it if you hadn't burned it up. Start the next time. See how long that's staying hot?
You want that time longer?
Yeah. So I'll continue to do that on that time until it got 2.5, 3 inches long, and then I'd mark it on the end with a piece of soapstone. I'd just mark on the side how long it is. I'd pull that one out of the way, and then I'd work on this other one and do the same exact length. I'm gonna quit working on this one since I burned it up. And I'm gonna jump. And so I've done this one correctly. So I'm gonna use this one. I'll use this one for the finished product, but I'll have to do a forge load. Fire tender? I don't know yet. I probably will say yes in a minute. I won't throw that down. Someone will run that one, step on it. And so pretend that this is what I ended up with.